A match that is made in continuity heaven. Yes, everybody, that is business continuity when it meets cybersecurity. My name is Franklin Fletcher. I'm the Information Security Risk Manager at Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits. I'd like to spend a few moments to discuss why it's so important to have a great relationship between business continuity and cybersecurity within your organization. Just to give you a little background about myself. Again, I'm the Information Security Risk Manager at Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits. I'm based in South Florida, actually Miramar, Florida. I have extensive experience in business continuity as well as cybersecurity, having responsibilities both in the public and private sectors. So I bring that kind of experience and an overview to these two areas, which I think are just so critical, especially when it's time for them to come together. Today's agenda is as follows. We'd really like to spend a few moments to talk about why business continuity and that marriage with cybersecurity is of importance. Spend a few moments to talk about what the role of cybersecurity is in your business continuity plan. And there are certain things that the cybersecurity professional needs to understand about business continuity. And I think on the other side, there are BC professionals who need to know some things about cybersecurity. It's very important to break down any silos within your organization between business continuity and cybersecurity. And there is a time, and I think we're all experiencing that currently with the COVID-19 pandemic, when those two areas actually converge to support in the crisis management scenario. Just a little background about the organization I work for and why you can just imagine business continuity and cyber are very important. Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits is the distributor of wine and spirits throughout the United States. We're in 41 states throughout the US. We have about 22,000 employees, and we have about $20 billion a year business. And if you think back to coming out of Prohibition, there's what we call a three-tier distribution system that has been set up. There are producers, there are distributors and retailers, but not one company can be in more than one area. So Southern Glazers is in the middle. We get product from our wineries and distillers, and we also make sure and deliver them to our retailers. So you can imagine logistics and staying in business is very important because there's a lot of jobs dependent on the flow of spirits throughout this country. And I'm sure many of you are also very much concerned about making sure that your favorite spirit is available at your local store. Let's talk a little bit about business continuity. I'm sure this audience understands that there are three key areas within business continuity. Obviously, the people, it's the facilities that they work from, whether it's an office facility or even their home, as we see more and more individuals working from home, especially with the current crisis, and technology. And it's very important to have business continuity and a plan that's comprehensive because, again, you want to be able to deliver products and services if there's an event that you can still meet certain expectations for your business. Now, when you talk about cybersecurity, and a lot of this has been in the media recently, is again making sure that your entire IT infrastructure, okay, is being protected and that there is no breaches. And if there is a breach, you have a plan to react to those breaches. So it's very important to consider that as part of your BC plan also. Cybersecurity is a key element of any business continuity plan today. And as we all know, a cyber attack can have a significant impact on any organization. If systems are down, you can have lost, also decrease in revenue. Your reputation. A lot of times you have customers who are dependent on you to maintain the security of the data that they provide to you. Your employees' health and safety could be impacted due to a cyber attack. And ultimately, business failure. An important part of having cybersecurity in your business continuity plan is to make sure that there is a good relationship between those two organizations. I know in some and cyber or even disaster recovery, but again, business continuity plan around cyber. So it really and allow you to also make sure that if in the event you continue your business operations. So there are some things that a business continuity professional really should know about cyber within their organization. It isn't just something in the IT space. So clearly, who's responsible for cybersecurity in your organization? Who's the CISO? Who are some of the key members there that provide the security framework and posture for your organization? What does that overall security architecture look like? Now, you don't have to get into every piece of detail, but you should have a pretty good feeling for some of the things that are in place in terms of perimeter security with firewalls. What's happened in terms of antivirus? Are operating systems being patched and kept up to date? Are end users aware of proper security processes, making sure they don't fall for phishing attacks? If there's a good security awareness program, you should have a pretty good sense, both physically and logically, what's going on from a security perspective within your organization. What's the roadmap for cybersecurity? Are there things that are going to be happening in the upcoming year or 2 years to strengthen and harden the environment that you support? And it's always interesting to get a pretty good idea what the Chief Information Security Officer is thinking about and what keeps him or her up at night. And are there certain regulatory requirements you need to be aware of? Is it PCI? Is it HIPAA? If you have business over in Europe, it could be GDPR. So just having a good sense of what are some of the regulatory requirements as they relate to cyber that you should be aware of also, and make sure that's all part of your BC plan, because again, that's the preventive measures to make sure you don't have an incident that can impact your organization. You also want to make sure you understand, are there any audits that are conducted? SOC reports, ISO 27001 NIST, are there audits conducted on a regular basis within your organization to ensure that you're following best practices from a cyber perspective? Is there an incident response plan in place specifically for IT? And is that IT IRP part of the overall incident response plan? Very important to understand that. Disaster recovery, of course, there are plans, but also, have you been engaged in exercises from a DR perspective? Sometimes IT folks can go ahead and do DR exercises and then bring in business continuity. It's important to be a part of that so you understand what are the real recovery times and recovery points within your organization. And let's talk about mobile devices just a bit. Everyone has a smartphone now, and a laptop and iPads, etc. You know, how are they being secured? Is there mobile device management tools there? Are there certain operating systems that are supported and not supported? Just having a good sense of what's the overall makeup of the mobile devices and how they're protected within your organization. And so many organizations today rely on software as a service, cloud providers. Are they reviewed before contracts are executed? You know, have the security folks also vetted the organizations to make sure they have a proper security posture? Are they also reevaluated on an annual basis? These are all measures that can help you be proactive and prevent any issues from a cyber perspective, and important for a BC professional to understand. So the BC manager, I think it's important to understand that you need to make sure you develop a relationship with the persons within your organization who are responsible for cybersecurity. So that may mean being part of a steering committee, facilitating meetings, etc. Important to have that relationship. Now, sometimes there could be silos. Maybe at times there is a feeling that, well, BC is the business side and I'm in IT doing cyber, and we really don't have to communicate or we have to deal with each other. But that's not true. It's going to be important, again, it's that there are routine calls and meetings to keep both sides abreast, and also discussions about any new initiative, that roadmap I spoke about earlier. These are all important pieces of making sure there are no silos between BC and your cyber team within your organization. So there's some things that the cyber professional should also know about business continuity. A lot of times you're so busy thinking about bits and bytes, but you need to understand what's the core business. You know, have you had the opportunity to visit certain locations? I personally have been able to go to warehouses and actually see the operations on the ground in terms of moving cases of wine and spirits out the door. It really gives you a good sense of what the core business is. I think it's important for the cyber professional to be invited in to see what's the core business of your organization. If it's a healthcare service that you provide, really to see what's happening on the ground, not to be off in the office somewhere and isolated from that. Is there a business impact analysis that's been conducted recently? Is it still relevant? Look over those BC plans. Make sure you clearly have an idea of what's important to the organization. Is there been an enterprise-wide incident response plan? Has it been tested? And have a good sense of who the customers are. Who are we trying to service? I think many of you understand the difference between the recovery time objective and the recovery point objective in terms of bringing back systems that have been impacted both from a system perspective and a data perspective. But I think it's also important to make sure that there's a discussion between BC and IT around those elements. Oftentimes, IT makes these decisions and they may not always align with the business. And oftentimes IT would say, well, it's going to take 24 hours to recover the system, but the business is saying, hey, but we need it within 4 hours if there's a problem. Now, of course, money can sometimes close that gap, or maybe it's not able to be closed, but that discussion needs to occur. And it's important, again, to understand when you have an incident, you could have some data loss. So how much data can you really lose? And then how long does it take to really bring those systems back to be available to employees and maybe even other business partners? So it's just good to have that discussion between the two organizations so that there is an agreement in terms of what they are and what is possible within the organization based on systems and budget also. Let's talk about some of the ways that, again, crisis management. This is when I really see the organization is coming together. Let's just think about some of the things recently. You had the Hurricane Dorian. You had the power outages in California, which is really interesting, rolling power outages, which can impact, obviously, facilities and also the technology there. So, are the generators in place? Are systems still able to stay up in the event of those types of power outages that were rolling through California? Tornadoes, every spring and fall, we see tornadoes going through different parts of the country. Wildfires in California, and we spoke earlier about phishing attacks. It's interesting, since the pandemic with COVID-19, there's been a significant increase in the number of potential phishing attacks, especially around COVID-19, getting people to believe there's testing and there's certain solutions and donations. That's a significant increase. And of course, as we all know now, pandemic, which has become real. It's not just an academic discussion anymore. So these are the types of events, examples where, again, the organizations must come together between BC, cyber, and IT. So if you look at this holistically in terms of a crisis management team, you can really see holistically that there are several elements within the organization that must come together. So whether it's business continuity, legal, finance, again, that's important from a corporate perspective, but even within a division, you're going to see there are several areas and functions that must also be engaged to keep it going. And those teams have to work together within the crisis management system. So again, when you think about it now, you have these two groups, BC, you have cyber and IT, but then when something happens and there's a crisis, it's important that they come together and holistically bring in different elements of the organization to support during such a time. So the question is, and the thing you need to kind of ponder within your organization is, how well is this working for you in your organization? Are you the one person who's doing BC and cyber and DR, or is there two separate organizations? Have you had time to really reach out to your partners on either side to better understand their business and how they could support the organization? You really want to take a look at that to make sure that it's working in a good function. I've been very fortunate in my current organization where we have a very close working relationship between the security. So that has really worked well for us. I have seen where during events that have impacted us, that we were able to support each other in a really professional fashion. So I think one takeaway I'd like to challenge each and every one of you listening to this webinar is to make sure within your organization that relationship is working well. So I'd like to thank you for spending some time this afternoon. And again, challenge you to look at your organization so you can keep the business going. Thank you very much.